Sopranos fans have long mourned the losses of James Gandolfini and Nancy Marchand, but they're not the only cast members to have passed on. From a Broadway star to a Goodfellas actor, these are some other Sopranos actors who are no longer with us. John Costelloe played a key role in the 6th season of The Sopranos as Jim Johnny Cakes Witowski, the short-order cook that Vito Spatafore falls in love with. Johnny Cakes represents a fresh start for Vito, who flees to a sleepy New Hampshire town after being outed as gay. Johnny Cakes is a warm, calming presence in Vito's life, and Vito even considers building a new life with him in New Hampshire.
I love you, Johnny Cakes.
However, Vito becomes restless with rustic living and ultimately decides to leave his love behind. While appearing in only 4 episodes, John Costelloe leaves a lasting impression as one of the series' most memorable short-term guest stars. A native of Brooklyn, New York, Costelloe served in the New York City Fire Department from 1987 to 1998, which overlapped with his acting career. Sadly, in 2008, John Costelloe died at the age of 47 of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Denise Borino-Quinn appeared in 17 episodes of The Sopranos as Ginny Sacramone, wife of New York crime boss John Sacramone, also known as Johnny Sac. Ginny is one of the audience's lenses into the everyday family lives of the mafia's higher echelons, as she and her husband move to New Jersey and begin to socialize more often with the Soprano crew. Ginny and Johnny Sac's relationship is most deeply explored in the episode The Weight, in which Johnny nearly kills Ralph Cifaretto for telling a joke about Ginny's weight. Ultimately, Johnny realizes that his extreme reaction merely plays into the cultural expectation that Ginny should be ashamed of her size, which is a great hardship on her. Prior to The Sopranos, Denise Borino-Quinn had no previous acting experience. She won the role of Ginny Sacramone unexpectedly at an open casting call for the series in 2000. Borino-Quinn succumbs to liver cancer in 2010 at the tragically young age of 46. Tom Aldredge appears in 23 episodes of The Sopranos as Hugh DeAngelis, Carmela Soprano's father. Stubborn and argumentative, Hugh is an obstacle for Carmela as often as he's an ally. Nevertheless, Hugh always seems to patch things up with his daughter. Tom Aldredge's career in film and television began in the early 1960s. His greater legacy, however, is on Broadway, where he racked up 5 Tony nominations between 1972 and 2004. Aldredge died of lymphoma in 2011. He was 83. Frank Anthony Vallelonga, also known as Tony Lip, portrayed Carmine Lupertazzi, head of New York's Lupertazzi crime family, in 11 episodes of The Sopranos. While generally a cunning gangster, Carmine fails to formally announce a successor and spends his final days grooming his clueless son, Little Carmine, rather than the better qualified John Sacramone. This results in a bloody power struggle over control of the family after his death. Vallelonga passed away at 82 in 2013, but his name became more famous after the release of Green Book, a 2018 film co-written by his son, Nick. The film was based on accounts of Vallelonga working as a driver and bodyguard for pianist Don Shirley in the 60s. Michele Feach Lamanna, played by Robert Loggia, enters a story at the start of the 5th season after being released from prison.
There he is, the man, the legend, Feach Lamanna.
Hey, my God, look at you big galoot.
However, Feach has difficulty taking orders from Tony and starts to undermine his authority. Before Feach's insubordination can become a bigger problem, Tony arranges to have him busted in possession of stolen goods and sent back to prison. Robert Loggia had a storied acting career before his 4-episode run on The Sopranos, with memorable roles in such like Scarface and Independence Day.
They're preparing to fire their primary weapon.
Plus, he's the guy who famously played Chopsticks with Tom Hanks in Big. Loggia died from Alzheimer's complications in 2015. He was 85 years old. David Margulies appeared as Tony's attorney, Neil Mink, in 8 episodes of The Sopranos. Neil is a reliable resource for Tony. His calm confidence in his own insight sometimes borders on aloofness, but he always manages to keep Tony out of prison, even as a parade of his colleagues are sent off to prison. After making his first film appearance in 1972, Margulies appeared steadily on both the big and small screen. To moviegoers, he's perhaps best remembered as Mayor Lenny Clutch in 1984's Ghostbusters and its 1989 sequel. Margulies also had a noteworthy Broadway career as well, appearing in Angels in America and The Iceman Cometh. He died from cancer in 2016 at the age of 78. Angelo Angie Gorepi was portrayed by actor Joe Santos in 7 episodes of The Sopranos. Angelo's joyful retirement is interrupted when Tony convinces him to intervene in the tug-of-war between John Sacramone and Little Carmine Lupertazzi over leadership of New York's most powerful crime family. However, Angelo is ultimately killed by Sacrimony underboss Phil Leotardo as part of a long string of retaliatory hits. While appearing as a gangster in The Sopranos, Joe Santos spent most of his career playing cops on various procedurals like Police Story and Magnum P.I. However, he's best known for his decades-long tenure as Sergeant Dennis Becker on the Rockford Files. Santos died of a heart attack in 2016 at the age of 84. For 11 episodes between the first and fifth season of The Sopranos, Frank Pellegrino recurs as FBI Station Chief Frank Cubitosa. Cubitosa oversees multiple attempts to gain intelligence into the Soprano family's dealings, all of which are foiled. Frank Pellegrino was another in a long line of actors to find a home in the crime genre, playing both cops and robbers in films like Goodfellas and Mickey Blue Eyes. Aside from acting, Pellegrino also co-owns the famous Rayo's restaurant in East Harlem. Pellegrino died of lung cancer in 2017. On the first season of The Sopranos, John Hurd plays Vin Marchand, a police detective with a gambling problem who works for Tony on the side. Marchand is the first person to warn Tony that his friend Sal Big Pussy Bonpensiero has become an FBI informant, but Tony distrusts Marchand and ignores him. After Marchand's death by suicide years later, Tony is befuddled to learn that he always thought of Tony as a friend.
You said many times that at least with Tony Soprano, you know where you stand.
Apart from his Emmy-nominated performance on The Sopranos, Hurd is most recognizable as Kevin McAllister's father in Home Alone. In 2017, John Hurd passed away while recovering from back surgery at the age of 71. Phil Leotardo, portrayed by Frank Vincent, first appears in Season 5 and eventually becomes a primary antagonist of the final season of The Sopranos. Initially reluctant to lead, Phil nevertheless ascends to boss of the Lupertazzi crime family after Johnny Sack's death, growing more impulsive and vengeful with power. Phil orders the elimination of the entire Soprano family leadership, but when his assassins fail to kill Tony himself, he finds himself on the defensive and loses control of his own family. Frank Vincent wore many hats over the course of his career as an entertainer. In the 1960s, he was a studio drummer in New York. In the 70s, he was a comedian performing a double act alongside Joe Pesci. Their act eventually took them to Hollywood, and in 1976, Vincent and Pesci were cast in Death Collector. Alongside Pesci, Vincent became a mainstay of crime dramas, such as Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas and Casino. Vincent died in 2017 after a heart attack at the age of 80. Introduced midway through the final season, Butch DiConcini is Phil Leotardo's right-hand man, played by Greg Antonacci. Though initially prodding Phil towards war against the Soprano crew, Butch changes his tune after the attempt to assassinate Tony fails. From there, he begins to worry about his own future with Phil. In the final Sopranos episode, Butch gives Tony his blessing to whack Phil and end the war. Greg Antonacci had a varied Hollywood career both in front of and behind the camera, working mostly on sitcoms. During the 1970s and 80s, Antonacci had recurring parts on Laverne and Shirley and Soap. He was also a director on Herman's Head and a writer and producer on It's a Living. Antonacci's 9 episodes on The Sopranos were his first screen acting credits in nearly a decade, and that led to a larger role on Boardwalk Empire from 2010 to 2014. Antonacci died in 2017 at 70 years old. Frances Esemplare, played by Nucci Gualtieri, mother of Paulie Walnut Gualtieri, in 8 episodes of The Sopranos. Nucci is a sweet old lady who means no harm to anyone, practically the polar opposite of her psychopathic son. However, they do share a few traits: naivety and sensitivity. Paulie is very protective of Nucci, and even extorts other residents of her retirement community into befriending her. However, Paulie's love for Nucci comes to an abrupt end when he discovers that Nucci is actually his aunt. After realizing this, Paulie refuses to speak to her.
You're a fraud and a phony.
Prior to The Sopranos, Esemplare had only a single screen credit, a small role in the 1997 independent film Sue. During her run of The Sopranos, Esemplare had a minor role in the indie feature The Immaculate Misconception, as well as a short film The Hit. Frances Esemplare passed away in 2017 at the age of 83. Suzanne Shepherd, who died on November 17, 2023 at the age of 89, was best known to fans of The Sopranos for her role as Carmela's mom, Mary DeAngelis. Motherhood is a central theme of The Sopranos, and Shepherd earned praise for playing one of the show's flawed matriarchs. She was particularly striking in her disapproval of the marriage between Carmela and Tony Soprano, who has plenty of mother issues of his own. In addition to her role in The Sopranos, Shepherd also played a memorable part in Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas. Shepherd plays the mother of Karen Hill in the film, which is probably her second most widely seen role within the organized crime subgenre. Shepherd also appeared in films like Requiem for a Dream and A Dirty Shame, among many other credits over the course of her career. At the time of his death on October 8, 2023 at the age of 83, Burt Young was remembered primarily for his role as Paulie in the Rocky movies. But in a single appearance in a Season 3 episode on The Sopranos, Young made a very strong impression in the chilling role of Bobby Bacalieri, Sr. The elder Bobby Bacala is in ill health with lung cancer, but is brought out of retirement to pull off one last hit. Any fan of the series likely remembers the murders that ensue, as well as Bobby Sr.'s ultimate fate when he crashes his car during an especially nasty coughing episode. But it's possible that Young does his best acting in the episode when Bobby Sr. accepts the job and pleads his desire to be helpful in the criminal underworld in which he once thrived.
It'll feel good being useful for a change.
The role of Bobby Sr. may have come late in Young's career, but he definitely made the most of the opportunity.